30 years ago, Clive Barker unleashed his cinematic debut, Hellraiser.
It's interesting to note the number of horror icons who originated in the 80s. Hockey Mask Jason, Freddy, Chucky, and of course Hellraiser's Pinhead. Yet what sets Hellraiser apart from those other movies is its somber tone. It isn't full of wisecracking child molesters, or talking toy dolls, or skinny-dipping teenagers. Hellraiser feels more like a literary horror film.
Which shouldn't be surprising, as writer-director Clive Barker was already a prominent author whose books of blood commanded immediate attention both in the UK and North America, aided by a loving blurb from Stephen King. "I have seen the future of the horror genre, and his name is Clive Barker." Clearly this quote meant more in 1985, before everyone realized Stephen King has the worst, most lowbrow fucking taste of all time. Remember all those cheesy, made-for-TV adaptations of his novels? He honestly thinks they're good. Hellraiser begins with one of the era's best opening sequences. There's no exposition, no slowly settling into the horror. Barker begins the film with the heat turned all the way up. A rough young man with the filthiest fingernails ever put to celluloid buys an old puzzle box. Soon, hooks are piercing his skin, and his mutilated body parts are swinging around in some kind of S&M dungeon. This isn't cute CGI gore. The visuals are genuinely upsetting. Back in 1987, a lot of viewers were saying, "I'm not sure I want to watch the rest of this movie." The story concerns an inherited house. The place is a gross dump, with an overkill of religious iconography, but Buddy and his new bride decide to move in. A quick tour reveals that Buddy's good-for-nothing brother Frank has been squatting in the house, using it as his own personal fuck hut. Turns out this Frank character is the guy we saw being eviscerated by the puzzle box. Next, we find out Frank also banged his brother's new bride. Good thing he's hanging upside down in hell, otherwise he'd probably get his ass kicked, both for cuckolding his brother, as well as leaving behind a real mess. While moving a mattress into the house, there's an unfortunate accident. This scene always makes me wince. The blood is sucked into the attic floor, and Frank is brought back to life. Well, mostly. He's kinda just the inside parts right now.
Incredibly, this masterful sequence wasn't originally in the movie. Due to the low budget, Clive Barker was forced to have Frank's resurrection occur off-screen. It was only after the film was finished that the backers put up the extra money to have this scene shot. Good decision.
Julia soon discovers her former lover is hiding out in the attic. Frank explains that Larry's spilled blood brought him back, and if he can get enough blood, he'll be made whole again.
His blood on the floor, it brought me back.
I'm not sure why Julia never questions how much blood Frank needs. Larry injured his hand severely, no question about that. But how much blood does it look like he spilled? Maybe a couple shot glasses worth? If that piddly amount of blood brought this much of Frank back, then how much more can he need? Couldn't she go down to the hospital and swipe a blood bag? Or maybe take one for the team and slash her own arm to bleed what Frank needs? I guess not, because her solution is to go out to bars, pick up horny creeps, lure them up to the attic, and bash their heads in with a hammer. Frank drains the bodies of their blood. He drinks 10 times more than what Larry spilled, yet after each victim, his condition barely seems to change. Meanwhile, Frank's niece Kirsty keeps coming around the house. I don't know what the deal is with her and this dude. I assumed they were boyfriend and girlfriend, until we see them sleeping in separate Ricky and Lucy beds. Maybe she's just his beard? Kirsty discovers Frank and steals his puzzle box.
No! Give me that.
No!
When she opens it, she summons the Cenobites, who are pissed off when they discover Frank has managed to escape them.
Tom and call Frank Cotton!
Oh, yes.
He escaped you!
Nobody escapes us.
That Kirsty's a real snitch. Back at the house, Frank kills Larry and slips into his skin. He kills Julia, and tries to kill Kirsty, but the Cenobites come back and save the day. For a minute or two, once Frank is dispatched, the Cenobites then try killing Kirsty. Hey, she did open the box. This final battle is a little disappointing. Each time Kirsty figures out a piece of the puzzle box, one of the Cenobites is sucked back to their dimension, with hand-drawn lightning animation covering their body. It's a pretty cheesy effect, but I'm glad Barker left it as is, and didn't do a George Lucas touch-up. Another odd thing about this final sequence is the order the Cenobites are banished. Pinhead goes first. You'd think he'd be the last one standing, the final boss Kirsty has to defeat. I mean, wouldn't that be more dramatic than leaving Butterball for last? And he doesn't even get sent back to the dimension. He gets crushed under a collapsing roof. Hard to believe now, but I guess when they were making the movie, it didn't occur to anyone that Pinhead was going to become one of the most iconic horror movie monsters of all time. I suppose I can understand. This was already a movie with a lot of fucked up stuff in it. Who knew Pinhead would stand out?
It's sort of like the early episodes of Happy Days, where the Fonz was a small character, but the audience responded to him so well he leapt into the forefront and basically turned it into the Fonzie show.
'Cause I'm the Fonz, huh? Hey!
Check out the end credits. He isn't even Pinhead yet. He's just called Lead Cenobite. Hellraiser was very controversial upon its initial release. It was briefly banned by the Ontario Censorship Board. This kind of banning happened quite often back then. The movie would be ready for release, but then, oops, there's a problem. Like Friday the 13th, The New Beginning, couldn't play in Ontario until Paramount cut some of the kill scenes. For Hellraiser, the Ontario Censorship Board had a problem with this shot of the rats nailed to the wall. Apparently they thought they were real rats and this was animal cruelty. I think they knew it was fake and they were just being a bunch of dicks.
Clive Barker, does the fertility of your own imagination never disturb you?
Clive Barker was often forced to publicly defend the film. I imagine one of the worst hours of his life was appearing on this Scottish talk show. Just listen to the barrage of stupid questions these dumbass kids have.
Do you agree that video nasties have led to an increase in brutal assaults by teenagers?
Do you think it's right to still use explicit violence in your writings?
You said that Hellraiser was clearly metaphoric. Then why was it banned in Canada? Don't you think this shows a slightly warped mind? Since the whole idea of nightmares is that they terrify you.
Somebody said, after reading one of your books, I feel like bludgeoning someone to death. What would you do?
Would you like to see a road accident and be thrilled by it?
Of course not, and that's the whole point, isn't it?
If I can see, I went and saw the film, so if I come back and next day I see a road accident, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be able to deal with it. Is that with the gore?
One is fantasy, one is reality, I'm sorry. And I think that's an important distinction.
He's so soft-spoken and mild-mannered. And his haircut looks like Luke when he was still a farm boy.
And I have a problem with fiction, particularly the Nightmare on Elm Street pictures, I must say, that make kind of heroes or culture heroes of the man in the mask, the man with the machete. Those pictures actually get cheers for the murderers.
Got to tell us about this awesome costume.
I am Pinhead from Hellraiser.
Hi, and you are...
Those who know me call me Pinhead.
Okay, let me take a look-see at the list. No Pinhead. Could it be under Nailhead?
Just let me in, or I'll tear your soul apart.
And here he is on Dr. Ruth, having his work reduced to a way for horny young kids to grab a cheap feel.
Isn't it also so that the girls who go to the movies with the guys are going to hug them like this? They're going to hold on tight to them.
Is there anything so bad about that?
No. I just want to know if that's a little bit in the back of your mind, Clive.
I think what's in the back of my mind is giving everybody in the theater a good time. I think girls and boys together. Hey, why not?
A decade later, Barker became a lot more outspoken. I guess he had his fill of stupid questions.
The Jesus of the Bible says that this is not God's best.
So you were covering up, weren't you? You were wearing the Bible.
No, you brought it up.
You were covering up.
No, you brought it up. You said that God was happy with your homosexuality.
We're in the Bible. He is happy.
Well, which God? The God of the Bible or your version of God that's in Hellraiser?
Well, where is it in the Bible that it says... So you saw it!
No, actually I did. Actually,
Do you ever feel that you should have been living in another time when your creations would have been believed in by the public?
Shenanigans. It's been a lot of fun, shenanigans. But now we've got to run. It's funny how the minutes seem seem to fly.